Have you ever enjoyed something, a song, a sport, a show, and then suddenly felt guilty for enjoying it? Felt like maybe you shouldn't be having so much fun, because somewhere behind that joy, there's money, power, or politics you don't fully agree with. That's the question I want to sit with today. A few days ago, I was listening to a BBC radio debate called Moral Maze. The topic was simple, but not simple at all. Is the World Cup morally compromised? Two sides argue it out, one saying yes, the World Cup has real moral problems, the other saying no, we're overthinking this. I want to walk you through both sides, and then share what I've landed. Let's start with the case for yes, it's compromised. The first argument is ticket prices. Tickets for a tournament like this can run from a few $100s to well over 10,000. For most people, that's simply out of reach. And here's the irony. Football was originally working class sport. In its early days in England, it was something factory workers played and watched on their one on one day off. Now the people who can afford front row seats are often the same people who were never part of the original culture. Meanwhile, on social media, you can see celebrities and VIP guests invited by sponsors sitting close to the pitch, while ordinary fans can barely get near the stadium. The second argument is corruption. FIFA, the organization running the tournament, has a documented history of bribery, fraud, and money laundering. Serious, serious, serious enough that back in 2015, the U.S. Department of Justice arrested the indicated, indicted several top officials. So the question becomes, can an organization with the history really host something people are supposed to trust and celebrate? The third argument, I think the most interesting one, is sports washing. This World Cup is co-hosted by the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And under the current US administration, there has been large-scale deportation of Latin American immigrants. Critics argue that hosting a global, joyful event like the World Cup functions as a kind of soft power, a way to project an image of an open, welcoming country, even while deeply controversial policies are happening at home. It's the same logic as greenwashing, just applied to sports instead of the environment. One phrase used in the debates stuck with me: a bonanza of sports washing. Bonanza, a word borrowed from Spanish meaning a huge wind, windfall, used here almost sarcastically to suggest we've never seen sports washing on this scale before. Now let's hear the other side. The case for no, it's not really compromised. First, ticket prices. Defenders argued this is simply supply and demand. When something is popular, prices rise, and that's not corruption. That's the market working as it should. High prices are, in a strange way, a proof of how much people love the sport. Second, organization. Commercialization is exactly what allowed football to spread across the entire world. Because players can now earn massive salaries and sponsorship, more kids dream of playing professionally, more countries invest in youth development, and the sport grows. And in terms of access, yes, attending in person is expensive, but most matches are broadcast on free, terrestrial television. Your home country's games are usually free to watch, so in that sense, some level of universal access is preserved. Third, and I found this one quietly moving, there's simply pure joy. For a country making its first appearance or returning after decades away, the World Cup is a moment of genuine, eh, uncomplicated celebration. Commercial problems don't erase that. Fourth, a sharp rebuttal to the sports washing argument. Those who politicize the World Cup by calling it sports washing are, in a way, doing the same thing they are criticizing, subordinating sports to their own political agenda. In other words, both critics and the people being criticized are mixing sport with politics. Neither side is neutral. And finally, is there any country that is morally pure? The US, one of the hosts, clearly has serious issues with with its deportation policies. But if we demand moral perfection from every host nation, we'd never be able to hold its tournament anywhere ever. No country would qualify. So where do I land on this? There's a line from the Japanese critics Hiroki Azuma that I keep coming back to. The more areas of life that don't require you to think about politics, the more peaceful the society is. Listening to this debate, I noticed something. Both sides, the ones calling it sports washing and the ones criticizing the criticism, were doing the exact same thing. They are both putting sport into the realm of politics. Neither side left room for football to simply be football. There is a common view, often associated with progressive or liberal thinking, that everything is political. That music, sport, anime, all of it carries political weight, and we have a responsibility to engage with that. But if we accept that literally everything is political, then the word politics itself stops meaning anything. Words exist by drawing boundaries where none existed before. It's precisely because non-political spaces exist that the category of political has any meaning at all. If, if everything is political, nothing is. I am not saying that these political questions don't matter. They do, and they are worth thinking about seriously. But I think there's real value in also being able to enjoy something without constantly running it through a political filter. Not asking what country is this artist from, what do they support, does that make this good or bad? Just being able to say honestly, this is good, and let that be enough. The space where you don't have to think politically is, in Asma's words, what peace actually feels like. And listening to this debate, I found myself thinking, if we're this entangled in politics, even over a football tournament, maybe our world right now isn't as peaceful as we'd like to believe. To be clear, I'm not dismissing the real problems here: the corruption, the inequality, the sports washing critique all deserve serious thought. But the idea that simply enjoying the World Cup makes you uh, complicit in everything wrong with it, I think that goes a step too far. Maybe what we need, at least sometimes, is to let ourselves feel the pure joy and defenders talk about, not naively ignoring the problems, but allowing space for something to simply be enjoyable without guilt attached. And honestly, I think this applies far beyond football. How much of how much of your work, your daily choices, your relationships do you filter through judgment before you let yourself enjoy them? Where in your own life could you use a little more of non-political, unfiltered space? And the space where you just let something be good and let that be enough. If today's talk gives you something to think about, feel free to subscribe for more conversations like this.